The master come, and it's freezing cold. But the first thing he gonna do, make fire, and what the slaves gonna do?
Rock?
The construction of winter quarters is imperative to our survival.
I'll come back for you.
Eat your breakfast, pack your things, say your goodbyes.
I promise.
It's gonna be hard enough getting there. What sense that make? Coming all the way back. So don't come back. Just survive. Ain't gonna be nothing here for you. Promise me. Run.
Green, I want for you, I wouldn't be here.
We all made sacrifices.
Only way we make it is together.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Real Talk Friends. We are thrilled that you joined us, and we are even more excited for our special guest. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
We just met a few weeks ago, so would you introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. I am Mauli Junior Bonner. I am one of the members of the Bonner family. I don't know if you know, we all sing.
The Empire?
Yeah, the Empire, yeah, exactly.
Known as the Bonner Empire?
Yeah, exactly. We all sing. We just started singing together, just literally like 4 or 5 years ago.
What?
Before it was always individually, we just would sing against each other.
Because your mom's been a choir aficionado for a long time.
Yeah, but I think she did it the wrong way.
She didn't want
she
her
had
kids?
us competing. Oh. So we always sing against each other. Oh. And so they're like, we're gonna sing together?
So who won?
Me.
Yeah, that's what I was
Only me.
for.
So you started singing together a few years ago.
Yes. So a few years ago, we actually did a gift for my parents, for my mom. It was her birthday, and my dad said, you know, she would love for you guys to record something, because like I said, we hadn't sung together. And we're like, okay, let's do it. So we did this song. I just did an arrangement of I Need Thee Every Hour, I believe, I think it was, and put it out on YouTube for my mom. Then the church reached out, was like, hey,
that was awesome.
can you do that again? You know, we're like, yeah.
A little bigger stage.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And so that just kind of started happening just a few years ago.
And that led into you being invited to be a part of the B1 celebration, which Scott and I are huge fans of.
Yeah, so that was June of 2018. It was a 40-year celebration of when the priesthood and temple ban was lifted.
Yes.
And so just really quick, my kind of, I've been so happy to talk to you because I was getting ready to teach Doctrine and Covenants, and that was right at the beginning of the summer we were preparing. And one of the things that I personally had wrestled with, struggled with, is trying to understand all of that. And it's never sat well with me, but obviously it wasn't something that directly impacted me. And so, but it's still that wrestle there. It's like, I need to understand this better. And so I remember when that was on, I got my classroom. I was the only one in my classroom, and I had my big projector, and I was just sitting there with my notes, my scriptures, and everything. And I remember just saying, Heavenly Father, I need some help here. Like, I need you to help me understand how all of this worked in a way where I can have some hope and go forward in faith and feel like I can authentically teach kids without feeling like I'm saying something that I don't really believe.
Right.
And I'm not, within minutes of that, I was in tears. And what I learned is I've got to stop trying to explain and allow people who lived through and experienced and have family members live through. I need to tell this through story.
Yep.
And that really made a huge difference for me. So rather than being up there and trying to explain everything, I was like, let me show you some people that this really affected. And we would watch, and that's how we taught that lesson, was just clips of that B1 celebration. And I have to say, that Child of God song that you guys sing at the end, that was it. At the end, it really got me. And so I appreciate that. I will never forget that experience. It will always be a core part of my testimony. So thank you.
Me too though. I appreciate that. But to your point, it was hearing the stories. I too was there that day learning, and me being black in the church. So I too was learning new other parts of history I didn't really know a lot about. And I honestly, I was embarrassed. I was like, I should know more. Here I am, black in the church, and people ask me questions and I can't answer all the questions. I just know what I believe. And so it was that B1 celebration that kind of catapulted me into learning more.
And before we jump into where it catapulted you to, what I loved about the celebration at the time, my son was finishing a mission in Zimbabwe.
Wow.
And so, our home was covered in beautiful pictures that felt like such a privilege that he could serve there. But what I loved about the celebration is it really broke down that a person of color doesn't have the same experience in Africa as they may in Haiti, as they may in LA.
Yes.
And I really appreciated that is how it was kind of orchestrated, because as you said, there were stories I didn't know, but I came from, before the ban was lifted, in an all-black neighborhood with a single mom. Wow. And all my friends were black, and I was going to primary on Thursday. I told you I wasn't going to cry if we talked pre.
You're like, I know.
And I remember inviting my best friends to come to church, and some of their parents were like, you can't go to that church. And I remember as a little tiny girl going home saying, what is going on? And so as much as my mom from a very young age wrestled with those questions, those hard questions that Scott just talked about, there's such an emotional that still at 50, I feel like that was such a beautiful gift in my life to live in that community.
Totally.
To learn about love, to learn about connection, to learn about faith, to learn about culture. And so I loved that the B1 touched on that experience for me and the experience my son was having in Africa, which is a different experience. So thank you for letting me share that emotional charge for me, that this experience for you led to such a beautiful conversation that we get to now have with you of what you did with that.
Yeah. Do
you want to talk about that question you had of like, I didn't know what I didn't know, and what happened after that?
Yeah. I mean, first of all, I'm just happy you didn't mess up your makeup. Because whoever did your eyes, they look great.
I did my eyes.
You pulled it together.
Thank you. Thanks for holding space for that.
Literally right after, I just was like, who can I talk to? What historians have this information? Because it wasn't easy information to find. And, I was fortunate enough to get in contact with historians, namely Amy Theriot, and she was great. I mean, sent me books and things to read and journals to look through. And then I'd have 100 questions and she'd sit on Zoom or a call with me and go through my questions and then pass me to Paul Reeve. Not everybody gets that opportunity, but I basically was just given a wealth of knowledge. And you would think that learning the things that I learned, things that I didn't know about the enslavement of other LDS members, you would think that would just rock my testimony and just shake it. I'm out, no way. No, but it did the opposite. And I was like, why is my testimony stronger now after learning these truths? I couldn't believe that. And then that's when I realized I have to make this available to everyone else, especially the younger generation, because they, like you, are embedded into Black culture. Black culture is a part of pop culture now. And they want questions answered. And they're getting those answers through Google and the arguments with their friends. And then they're out.
Right.
And that's not working for us right now.
I love what you just said, that it was the truth that actually anchored you and didn't pull you away. Why did you settle on the story that led to the current project you have, which was Green Flake's story, out of all of that access?
I know. What's funny is it was not about Green Flake initially. It was Elijah Abel. And today was the first time I started talking about where it began, really, because I didn't want to take it from Green Flake, but it was as though he just kept coming to me. And there's so little about Green Flake. There's more about everybody else, and so little about Green Flake. even though he played one of the biggest roles possible as an early enslaved member of the Church of Jesus Christ. I was writing about Elijah Abel, and if I'm being just completely honest, I felt the presence of Green Flake and Brigham Young. Wow. Like together. And I'm like, what is that? And that wasn't the stuff, all the things I was it wasn't really about them. And I'm like, why them? And at the time, I didn't have a whole lot on Green Flake. You can't find a whole lot on him. But I couldn't help but feel like, oh, this is his story. That's what this is all about. And so I'd written so much. Honestly, I don't know how I wrote as much as I wrote. I'm a songwriter first. So when I first was learning, as I'm reading, I was writing songs, and so I had the soundtrack before I had the script. And so I had all these songs, and then I began filling in these scenes with the history, and I couldn't get around Green Flake, even though there's just little pieces of nuggets of him throughout, the books.
Why from a soundtrack to a movie?
Because, I wasn't writing to write a movie. I was writing music because that's how I dealt with my tears, to be honest. And so I'm emotional reading of these things, and I'd stop, and writing a song just helped me get through it. And then after writing the songs, I just began writing more. So honestly, within about 3 weeks, I had like 200 pages of stuff, and I'm like, I think this is like a movie or something. Literally, That's what I was feeling like. This is like at the end of August. So a month and a half after the B1 celebration. I was like, I think this is a movie. And so that's when I was like, oh, it's a movie. It needs to be a movie. That's how people are gonna get it. And so then I just went full steam ahead and was like, okay, I'm gonna shoot it in December. Like August, September, and I was like, cool.
When
and
it's freezing.
I called a couple people that I knew of. Hey, I'm gonna make this film. It's called Green Flake. We're gonna shoot in December. Are you? And then they start laughing. And I'm like, I don't see what's so funny. I don't understand what's happening.
Should we start sooner? Or no?
Yeah, exactly. No, that's just not how it goes. And I was like, well, that's how this is going. And I was like, I'm not asking you how. I'm asking you, are you in? Are you in or you're out? Because it's happening. And a few months later.
That's how all the great stuff is born, right?
Yeah.
I'm just that Brigham Young Green Flake story, I can't recover from that. I'm just sitting here thinking, because a lot of what I have learned, that doesn't, my understanding, and it sounds like more to my ignorance than anything is, I wouldn't see that as a together relationship. It would seem like more of a fractured type relationship. So, and it sounds like in the movie, there's a lot of time where you spend in these paradoxes that Green Flake is dealing with. So can you tell us a little bit about Green Flake and some of the things that really impressed you about him specifically as you were studying about him, that led you to say, this is the guy?
Yeah. Honestly, that he didn't run. That he didn't run. And yeah, he should have, could have, why not? And I was like, why didn't he try to escape enslavement? And I believe that he believed what Joseph was teaching, that no, after this life, your family can be reunited. And if you can imagine being someone that all you know is being torn from family, and someone tells you, we can fix all of that. So I think that there was no way he was going to be detoured from it. And so then you have Brigham Young, who becomes the next prophet. And to know that when Brigham Young, so for those who don't know, when Brigham Young got sick in winter quarters, he sent the advance group on to continue trekking and laying down the land. And Green Flake drove the first wagon in. And it wasn't a race to the front. So why is Green Flake in front? So that only tells you what that relationship must have been between Brigham Young and Green Flake. And then you're probably thinking, what I was thinking, well then, but I've Googled some stuff and I've seen what he said.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
absolutely.
What's going on? But obviously there was a very complicated situation that Brigham Young found himself in, dealing with his views on race, those views of the Southerners coming in, bringing their slave labor, sold everything, but brought their slave labor with them. And now they're a part of legislation and leaders in the church. And then Brigham Young orchestrates the freedom of Green Flake right before it becomes a slave state in Utah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that paradox that Scott just asked about, you've mentioned a few of them there, where I have seen the movie and I was overwhelmed with the idea that there is this nuance and these layers, and we often look back on history and think we understand why someone is writing this in this revelation or acting in this way. What else did you, because you've alluded to the fact that you learned things that should have pushed you way out, do you feel comfortable sharing a little bit more of what added to those ideas of this is a wrestle that not just Green Flake but many other Black pioneer saints were dealing with at the time?
Yeah, well, this is, for me, the correlation between Green Flake and other people in scriptures who lived portions of their lives enslaved. I saw the direct correlation. I didn't see Green Flake as any different. You know, when I was asked, so why is this important to white people? Why? And my answer to that is when you talk about Joseph of Egypt and the Jews of Israel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, Daniel and the lion's den.
King Limhi's people, right?
Yes.
So many slave stories.
They're all enslaved for portions of their life. I would venture to say none of them are white, but we draw strength from them, you and I both. And we would never dream of taking their enslavement out of their story. That would hurt our strength, our faith-building testimony. So why would we do that to Green Flake when he was right here?
And
so,
then trusted and led out and had so many opportunities to escape.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing for me that I left watching the movie thinking, I'm not enough Green Flake. I went home looking for some more Green Flake. I'm like, how do I become more like Green Flake? Like, he became this hero that, like you said, we have to know this history. All of us, not this group. All of us, because I went home and thought, if the principle of eternal families that Joseph taught Green Flake allowed Green Flake to maneuver and wrestle in the paradoxes of bigotry, slavery, racism, and abuse on so many levels, on levels I'll never be asked, I don't think, in my life to encounter, and he stays, I have no reason to leave. Like, I really don't. And what's my anchor? What's my anchor? Green Flake was like, I will not be moved. And I will say I've been offended by much less, you know?
Right.
And hurt by much less.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
Mauli, I was going to ask you, so you've got this Green Flake story, and then you have your story, right? You have you as a person and your family and your friends and these two, like, just kind of, all of a sudden now over the last couple or 3 years, they've just kind of been like meshing together. What are some of the observations that you've had in your own, looking back at you in 2018 and versus you now? What are some of the observations that you've had along the way that have filled in the gap that's really brought you to the point where you faithfully, hopefully, and gratefully put this movie out for the rest of us and tell this story for the rest of us to learn from?
Well, the biggest lesson that I've learned through this whole process is that you do not have to know what you're doing to do what you're supposed to do. And
wait, hold on a second. I need you to say that again. You do not have to know what you're doing in order to do what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, what you're supposed to do. When you think of Noah and what he accomplished, not being a carpenter, it was probably, I believe, it was because he didn't know that there weren't these barriers stopping him and saying, well, no, this is this way, well, that way. He was able to follow Spirit and just run. And for me, I had never dreamed of making a film, writing a script, never. I get pop stars ready for their live performances. That's my 9 to 5. That has nothing to do with writing a script and getting a location and getting a crew and all. But it was the hardest, easiest thing I've ever done in my whole life. Just doing it. I found that when you just take the steps forward, it's kind of like that Indiana Jones movie when he throws the sand out onto the walkway and he takes a step. It's like the Lord makes a way. He makes a way. Even the doors that close, if you're moving quick enough, you just kind of shimmy off it into another door. It's beautiful. And so I just learned that all things are possible if you just start moving in that direction. And I believe that this film is going to move us as a people within the church especially, in the direction we're all dying to go. Instead of waiting for it to be passed, trickled down to us to tell us we can move in that direction, we have to move. We know what we're supposed to do. We know what's good. We know what's right. And if we just take those steps in that direction, I think we're going to quickly alter the way the church is talked about.
For sure. And I love that you were talking about the pliability of the Lord, that because you weren't an expert director or filmmaker, you didn't get in the way maybe as much because you were in full surrender the whole time.
Totally.
And to me, the film looks as if you've been doing it forever. I mean, from a production standpoint, it's brilliantly acted. Your brother is phenomenal. He's Green Flake.
Oh my gosh.
Shout out, right?
Yeah, Yahosh Bonner. He is Green Flake. There's so many great actors. Dallin Bayless.
Oh.
Yahosh Bonner, my sister Clotilde Farkas. Oyoyo Bonner's in it. David Osmond makes a cameo.
Your mama.
Yeah, Casey Elliott.
Casey
I mean,
Elliott.
there's so many people. Alex Boyer. Everybody came on board, and literally it was just a phone call like, "Hey, Casey, I'm making this movie. Can you come on?" And hey, Alex, and this is within a couple of months. So they're like, "Okay, we're in. Whatever we got to do, we're in." And man, it just snowballed from there. And I feel like I'm a fan from the outside. I'm like, this is doing really good. I can't, like, because it won best film in it won best film in Istanbul, London, LA, like so many awards.
Wow.
Yeah, right. But they don't know that the day before we're about to start filming, I guess I was producing, is what they call it, to where you're pulling it all together.
Yes.
You know?
It's a fancy word for all the
wrangling.
loose ends.
It's a fancy word for wrangling folk.
Problem solving, fires out, all that.
Yeah. So I'm doing all that until the day before we're about to shoot. I am like, oh, I'm the director. And I was freaking out. I'm like, what am I supposed to do? What are they expecting me to do? And so I literally was on YouTube. When to say action, when to say cut. The day before.
I love that.
We get on the set, and everybody's like doing the things, like your people, rolling, cameras, lighting. I'm like, okay, cool.
You're like, who does all that?
Yeah, and so I'm waiting.
It's me. Oh my God.
And it's quiet, and it's just quiet. And everybody's just, and then the first AD, sir, it's on you. I'm like, oh, okay, this isn't gonna work. We gotta try it a different way. I'm like, you say action, I'll say cut, and then we'll do it that way. So we just had to make it work for me.
I love that authenticity and openness of God is always called, right? I think that's why he approached a 14-year-old boy, because he was pliable. I don't think he left the Sacred Grove saying, I'm going to be the prophet. He left with some answers to a few questions. And I love that you give us that insight.
Well, I have so many more questions about Now on Set, but before that though, because obviously and the Lord works with us in really beautiful ways, but I would love to just hear you glorify God through your talents for a second. What I mean by that is, as you look back on your life as well, up to leading to doing something that you've never really done before, in what ways do you feel skill-wise you were prepared? Like, what kind of gifts and talents do you have that when you started directing, it actually became maybe more natural than you thought it would?
Yeah.
Because it sounds like at least that's the effect that you had on the set.
For who God calls, he qualifies.
Yeah, but at the same time, you've got to have some creativity and some skills and some gifts that have already been developed, and then the Lord just kind of put those together, it seems.
Yes. I can hear my mom in the background. Tell them what you do. Just tell them the names. Yeah. So I prepare pop artists for live recordings and shows. So
Are you going to name drop for us?
I'm
Good.
gonna-
Oh, good.
So like Camila Cabello,
Okay.
Katy Perry, Ariana Grande, people that you hear on the radio.
I've heard of them.
So
We're acting really cool. If you're listening on podcast, it may be worth watching our face right now.
So I mean.
And how do you prepare them?
Yeah, so it's different for every artist. So some, it might be determining what their order of their set's going to be, like if they're conditioned to sing the full concert and be able to keep their voice. And some other people, it's in the recording studio, do it again, like this, like that. Other people, it's working
That's a really
through their
nice
nerves.
way to say what you're saying.
Yeah. Very good. Do it again. Very good. Yeah. So but that's basically what I do, and a lot of it is preparing them to be their most authentic self. And then, so when I got to set, I did realize like, oh, this is the easy part, directing them to help them just be who they are, because the casting, was a really big part of it, finding the right person to play those characters. And then it's just
brilliantly casted.
Oh,
Do you know what I can say too? And this is just because it's fresh on my mind. I just recently taught this, but in section 46, one of the gifts of the Spirit that's listed in there is the gift of administration of spirits. And in the seminary teacher manual, some of the ones that you're like, what does that mean, right? Like the scriptures, you're like, that's a different language. It essentially is a leadership skill to put people's gifts to put people with their gifts in a spot where they can be most successful. What you just described is exactly what that gift is this ability to lead people, put them in situations where they can then maximize their own talents and gifts, and it all just works together. That's really cool. Sorry, it was just a new one because I was like, oh, that's a good gift to have when you're leading.
Can I share that one of the spiritual gifts I sensed the first time I met you, which was just a few weeks ago? I'm thinking, why haven't we met before? But I guess I don't get to meet all the Bonners at once, right?
Take your time, take your time.
There's a lot of you. Yeah. Was the spiritual gift of your grace, the spiritual gift of your hopefulness, the spiritual gift that you have in being authentic, to talk about the awkward, the hard, the traumatic. You did not cut corners. It could have been way more, Hollywood version of some of those scenes. But I left the screening thinking his spiritual gift, what you just framed it as, I remember telling my friend that was with me that night, I just said, I feel hopeful, but nothing was hidden. And that is the dance I think we're all called to dance right now. How can we talk about these things in authentic ways where we're not making it an easier story, right?
Yeah.
Like you said, the scriptures don't take away the slavery,
right.
But then do it in a way that you framed it from the beginning of the story to the end. I was like, okay, I'm seeing this hard stuff, but it's moving me forward. And from what you shared after the B1 celebration, as you studied, that's exactly what happened, is you saw more hard stuff and it still propelled you forward. Do you see that spiritual gift in yourself? Has that been reflected back, or can we just sit here for another 20 minutes and tell you how awesome that spiritual gift is?
No, I guess I don't recognize that spiritual gift. I just kind of see things as they are to me. I appreciate that, but I was just saying the other day that we each in our cultures have such a rich history of goodness, greatness, and white culture. In America, the sacrifices that hundreds of thousands of people made so that people like my great-grandfather who was enslaved can be emancipated, they laid down their lives for that. That's the history of those people, flying across country to fight to stop the evil of the Holocaust. White people have that history. This is not a black-white thing. They're used to this. Black folks, we're used to it too, fighting, underdog. Every culture has their thing. And as much as we should learn from the struggles that we have faced, especially those who came before us, we have to remember our greatness. That's why we're sitting here like this. We can't forget that. And so, for every time that we teach the hard things, we have to remember the good things and the great things. We have to. When we read the scriptures, we read both. We see those hard things, and then we see those beautiful, graceful, Christ-like things. He did it all. Sacrifice, suffer, everything. And so, I don't know. I see it the way I see it, and I know that when people watch this film, and when they learn of this history, the way it should be taught, not in secret, not in whispers, out in the open so we can talk about it.
No, in a special section in a library that we don't open.
When we do that, we can start to heal. Man, we're dying for it. We're craving it. And so I'm just excited that somehow this film and the monument that's going to follow is going to do that for us.
Well, tell us a little bit about the monument that you are hoping to get built, because this is fascinating to me. And I've just heard you talk about this monument. And so can you give us a little bit more detail?
Yes. Well, initially, as I was doing the film and whatever else, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna be rich. Like this is, and they were winning things like this is, Lord, I get it, I see
Best
it.
actor,
I see the vision.
best film. Oh, I get it.
I get it. You know, and
Katy
then,
Perry, I love you, but I have another
I
job.
gotta go. You know, and then, you know, I was gonna take my family and like cast, crew, everybody to like, in my mind, the monuments, and just go take pictures by the monument celebrating these people that I thought were celebrated. I didn't know. I don't live here in Utah where the early pioneers came. And so when I learned that there wasn't a place, I'm like, but Green Flake, surely there's a place. I'm like,
Jane Manning, Elijah Abel.
yeah, there has to be, you know, and to find that there wasn't this place honoring these pioneers who were enslaved and free that had a different experience than you and I. We have everything the church has to offer. They didn't and still stayed faithful. Where is the monument? And then that's when it was like, oh, that's what this is for. And that was like everything for me. Then it was like, now it makes sense, because honestly, it's been a sacrifice, you know, and hard in these years trying to make this film happen and everything. And now I see why the Lord was pushing me to run, because I think we can feel that the time is now for this film. And this monument, it's going to change everything, because I want the world to embrace what our church leaders are doing when they're speaking out against racism and want to lead out. Yes, but if there's no representation, the words can fall short. And I feel like, I know President Nelson doesn't want his words to fall short. He needs Christ's message to resonate. And we need a place where our families, our children, our friends,
all of
our
children
can go and say, this is a place for all people. And look what we did together. We're gonna do that. I don't question it. We're going to do that.
It's going to happen. I think about the monument, the Martin Luther King monument in DC, and how there's this unfinished portion. And as you were
So
just
beautiful.
talking, it's that invitation that this story is unfolding and is not finished. And I'm so grateful that you didn't read and learn and feel your heart wall off, or discouragement to take over, or that story in your head of, I prepare pop stars, I don't write films, that you just kept consecrating the offering so that the Lord can keep allowing the unfolding of the story. And I'm so hopeful when I'm in your presence and when I watch the movie and just having this conversation today, I can feel that renewed hope that it's not a one or the other, it's the and. It's talk about the hard stuff and find more hope. Talk about the hard stuff and find more truth. Talk about the hard stuff and be more converted. Not the opposite of what we often, all of us do this, right? We hide the shame because we're afraid if we talk about the thing that's the yuck, that somehow it's going to take us out. And God is always inviting us to step into the light and say, tell the truth, speak the truth. And that's where you find your freedom.
Right.
I mean, no pun intended
Yeah,
to the freedom
right.
story, but right?
But to that pun, when you think of Brigham Young and Green Flake, you can never really fully understand Brigham Young and the nuances and complexities of his situation with Green Flake and the enslavement that took place in Utah. Brigham Young orchestrated Green Flake's freedom, Green Flake's wife, Green Flake's wife's mother, all right before it became a slave state for other enslaved pioneers. And yes, we wish that didn't happen, but you don't get to understand our prophet more deeply without telling the full stories of these early pioneers. The more we know, the better we are, you know, and that's what we're inviting people in the world to come see in our church, that there's more.
There's more.
There's more.
Scott, are you thinking, like, for those that are watching that are like, wait, Utah was a slave state? How long for those this is the first news?
Yeah.
It's breaking news.
Oh no, I know. So listen, I know. No,
Everyone's squirming.
No, I know.
Wait,
Everyone's like,
Real Talk
let's
is teaching false history.
Okay.
Let's
No.
swarm with
So,
Yeah.
okay, so listen. Between 1852 to 1862, Utah territory was commissioned to have slaves. And it is what it is. I can't, I mean, of course I think of what led to that and what not, but when you think of the Southern converts coming, selling everything except for their slave labor coming down, and then you have the Northerners coming, everybody's coming here, and then imagine what that ward is like. You know,
Yeah.
You think your gospel doctrine's awkward
Oh my God.
on Zoom?
Yeah, and so it did end up becoming that way, and it's a difficult part of history. That's another big part of why this monument's important, to pay homage to those who were enslaved. So as much as we are going to celebrate them, we also have to remember and hear their full story. So I'm going to give you a little more. It's a little heavy.
Let's go. We've got time.
Please.
So just take a second and imagine if you are one of these enslaved pioneers or free black pioneers, and you're paying your full tithe, or your labor is being used to build the temple, praying to have your family sealed together. This church is offering the one thing that nowhere else in America is offering, the reunion of the family. For that reason alone, that they contributed to that building. We have to remember them. We have to. We have to build that. So this is the way I see it. There's going, and I don't talk like I hope, I want, because I don't even know what that means. I just say what is. There's going to be a beautiful monument, and it's going to be on temple grounds. It's going to be it's going to be a beautiful 10-foot white granite wall to pay homage to the 10 years of enslavement that we will recognize. And in that wall will be characters, people who served so valiantly as saints in restoring this gospel of Jesus Christ, Green Flake being one who drove the first wagon in. And representing the enslaved pioneers, Elijah Abel, one of the first black members of the church to hold the priesthood, Quorum of the 70. And Jane Manning James being another one. Her living with Joseph Smith and being in such close proximity to the prophet. And even though she was partitioning to be sealed to her family, denied that, she kept the faith, paid her tithe, and continued. We're going to honor them. So, and they're all going to be looking right at the entrance of the temple because they are welcome. And we all know that.
And when we know their stories, we're invited to wrestle with our paradoxes.
Yeah.
When we know their stories, we get to stop and say, maybe I understand my Black brothers and sisters' pain that has been passed on generation to generation a little better. Maybe I won't be so quick to leave when I get offended because of Green Flake's example.
Oh my gosh.
And even more in the movie you show, they go back. They had so many opportunities to say, this is not comfortable, this is not working, and I'm out of here. What is the invitation for us to stay, right?
Yeah. All we can do, honestly, our leadership is amazing. Our prophet is divine. But they're men. Pray for them. They're doing the best they can. Pray for them.
For a global
yes.
church. Yeah.
They want our prayers. So as they continue to serve the Lord and His church, that they do the best they can, just like us. So there may be things along the way, just like the past, we may not agree with. And we may be like, that, no way, that's right. But are you a member of this policy, or are you a member of Christ's restored gospel? Christ came, He laid down His life for me. I'm going nowheres. Like, I'm going.
Can I get an A and amen?
Yes.
Thank you for testifying and witnessing of that. Not just by your words, but how you live. Really.
Well, and I would love to hear, so that's actually where I was going to ask is, so for Green Flake at this and a lot of these other members, it's this promise of eternal families, the promise of it, but then the practice that says no.
Yeah.
And them trying to figure that out. But for you, what are some of the things for you that are just, Anthony Sweat calls them the non-negotiables, like the things about the gospel that just you will not move from? What are the things that keep you motivated and hopeful in your testimony so that you can move through these complicated situations and still keep your faith in Christ?
Honestly, everything else besides Christ is a bit of a blur for me.
That's our language.
Is it really?
That is so great, yeah.
Yes.
So
Everything
It's gotta
outside of
be
Christ
eyes on
is a little bit of a blur.
Eyes on Jesus, everything else is white noise.
Yeah, I mean, it has to be that, and it doesn't mean that you're not affected by different things as they change and evolve or whatever else, but I to your point, like, I'm never, ever going to experience the trauma, trials, faith, strengthening life that some of those enslaved pioneers had to have. Never going to. So I think I can handle whatever else comes. If not, then let me learn more about their story so that I can handle it.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm so excited. Like, we're gonna do another one of these.
Okay.
And then after,
Let's do it.
and we're gonna be celebrating.
We're
and
just gonna
high-fiving.
sit here and cry.
Yeah.
For 40 minutes
Yes.
with big boxes of tissue.
Yes.
And just process the pain and rejoice.
Yeah. But those watching, can I speak to them? Is that okay?
Yes,
absolutely.
We
So-
said go straight to the camera.
I just gotta say, it's okay. It's okay. All the things you're hearing and learning, it's okay. Our history is what it is. When people say, like, so why do you stay in the church? I stay in America. Just tell the history. Let's learn from it. Let's grow from it. I love this country. It does not change where we are today. Love who we are today, and then decide how we together are going to move forward in Christ. But let's not take pieces of the past and let that pull us away from Christ, he's going in that direction, full speed ahead. Mm-hmm. So those things cannot slow us down. So I know that I gave a lot of information, a lot of new things. Know that it's okay. For you, it's okay. For me, it's all gonna be okay because we are here now. We weren't there. You weren't there. You weren't.
And I'm so grateful that you are willing to have these conversations, not just in the film, but with Scott and I today for our audience, because there are people that don't have access to having these conversations, right? So they're watching them, and I think vicariously having a conversation with you. So I've prayed this whole episode that we're asking the questions that I can feel our viewers are saying, but I don't, or I wonder, or what about this? And I have felt prayers answered today. I've felt hearts change. I felt hearts open. I've been inspired. I already thought you'd already taken me there, but I went about 100,000 degrees in. And we have to keep having these conversations. I think Christ has shown that from his mortal ministry, that he did not hide from the awkward, hard conversations with the marginalized, with church leaders that didn't understand his teaching. And so thank you for being a disciple, an example of him, and being willing to have those conversations.
Yeah. So kind of you. Thank you.
No, it's true.
And then as we finish, is there anything else that you want to say about Green Flake and the movie, and how we can, because I'm sure everyone's like, maybe they pause this to go watch it and they'll finish this episode after. But can you tell us a little bit about more when it's going to be released? And we'll put this information in our notes as well on the show. But
well, I would just say go to greenflakemovie.com.
Okay.
So that's where all the next steps are there. If you're like, I want to see the film, I want to donate towards the monument, go there. And basically the way we're doing is your donation is your screening, is your ticket. So when you make your donation, that's your screening for your household. And we are on the 15th, of May was the Green Flake benefit concert, and we left that up so that people can see it. So if you haven't seen the benefit concert, you can go on the Green Flake Facebook page or on the website greenflakemovie.com. Watch it. That's where a bunch of artists are singing. You learn a little bit more about this history. Pick your watch party night when you want to watch it, and I'm going to be on with everybody each virtual screening because they're virtual. They're not in theaters. Because I saw that when we did the screening,
I think the one I was at,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. It's heavy and it's emotional, and it just didn't feel right to drop all this information on people and then walk away and send them home in their cars, you know. And so they're all virtual, so everybody has access to it. And I'll be on, and others, actors and influencers who are a part of this movement before and after the film, to be able to talk, to find resolve and next steps. So just don't feel like you go watch the movie and then you're left alone. We'll be there.
And it is hopeful. I left knowing more, right? But I didn't leave feeling like there weren't steps forward. And I'm grateful for you in framing the film that way and then the conversations that way, because I think so often we throw stuff out there and everyone's like, now what? Now what?
Now what?
Now what? And this whole conversation has invited me to keep stepping forward and doing the things that I didn't, how did you say it, that I have never known how to do, but I'm still called to do it?
Yep.
That's my everyday life,
I know.
right?
It's so
everyday
true.
life.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Mauli. We really appreciate you being on with us. Is there anything else that we want to ask him before we go?
Just that we are setting the date for you to come back after the monument is built.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is great. You guys are fun.
We'll have food.
We should eat.
Okay.
Yeah, that's true.
Because it may go longer.
Okay.
We should
Okay.
eat.
Okay.
Crew, get ready. It's gonna go longer.
Can we cut my? Do I do an ugly cry? Because I'm an ugly cry.
No,
If I did,
it's always me doing the ugly cry. Scott looks composed.
Very composed. Don't cry, don't cry, don't cry, don't cry. The whole time.
Oh, thank you.
But thank you so much. Please go check that out at greenflakemovie.com. And we really appreciate your time and the energy that you spending with us. And Mauli, of course, thank you for all that you're offering. And we hope that we can do our part to help spread and amplify the message that you have. So thank you so much, and we'll see you again on Real Talk Friends. You guys, please like and subscribe and click the bell.
Like and subscribe.
What did I say?
You did it. It was
Like and
perfect.
subscribe
That was so perfect.
and click the bell. Just do it.